careless, reckless, and compromised. Welcome to Law and Society. Please subscribe. Let's talk about how our country is being systematically compromised and our government is being gutted and opened up. I talk about these things almost every day with you, and just as a note before I go into the substance of today's material, a lot of the things that I talk about may sound repetitive because it is in the same strain as what is happening, or it is a continuation of what is happening to our government and to our democracy. So I got a critique saying that, there was nothing new in one of my episodes from 2 weeks ago. Well, of course there's nothing new. It's from 2 weeks ago. If you want to check what I'm talking about today, please check out my more recent videos. So, come on. Now, having said that, let me get back to talking about how our government is being careless and reckless. Pam Bondi is the Attorney General of the United States. Her job is to take care that the laws are being executed without fear or favor. Her job isn't to be a Fox reporter or a Fox spokesperson. She has, in the last 2 months, been on TV more than the last 2 attorney generals combined in their tenure. Bill Barr and Blinken. Maybe not Blinken, but at least Bill Barr. I don't think Blinken said anything for quite a while. But not Blinken, what am I saying? Garland. Bill Barr and Merrick Garland. Blinken was state. So, yeah, you didn't hear from Merrick Garland on Fox News or any other news on going after members of Congress who are exercising their free speech rights under the First Amendment and their right to peaceably assemble to have their grievances heard. And Pam Bondi gets on Fox News and threatens this member of Congress by telling her to tread carefully because of evidently Jasmine Crockett is inciting violence. No, Pam Bondi, if you really want to go to see the measure of what incites violence, you just need to go back to January 6th and look at the facts instead of stand behind Donald Trump and deny what happened on that day. What Jasmine Crockett is doing is energizing people, is informing the people about your carelessness and your recklessness. And what you are doing, ironically, is giving Jasmine Crockett and the rest of us the exact example of weaponization of our government that you are claiming happened to Donald Trump when he was out of office, when he committed crimes that the whole world saw. And if you're trying to rewrite history, me as a grain of sand and bigger independent media as deserts of sand will get in the way of your machinations. We will keep on speaking the truth. So stop going after members of Congress and do your job, Ms. Bondi. Now let's go to how Elon Musk and Doge continue to gut everything from education to EPA to NIH research to Social Security workers and veterans care professionals who take care of the mental health of veterans. They are gutting these things, and they are spitting in the face of uh, federal employees, and they're betraying veterans just left, right, and center, especially when you consider that 30% of the federal workforce is veterans. So this hatchet job of gutting our government is careless and reckless. And in the next few months, when summer hits, we will see. We're seeing riots now. We're not seeing riots now. We're seeing peaceful protests. But there could be possibility of there being riots on the street, that are largely peaceful protests. And maybe that's what Donald Trump wants. Maybe that's what Donald Trump is pushing us to get to, so that he can declare martial law. So we have to be sure that there isn't rioting on the streets or vandalism with Teslas. We have to peaceably protest and speak truth to power, like Bernie Sanders and AOC and Jasmine Crockett. And I've said that they are coming out and talking about the necessary things that is important to regular Americans, which is livable wage, which is taxing the rich, which is keeping Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid funded and alive, which is funding the education departments and the veteran programs and other services, safety net services, even more, by taxing the rich, by lifting the cap on incomes above $250K for Social Security taxes. So there is a push here that is a democratic movement that AOC and Jasmine Crockett and Bernie Sanders, more than anybody else, is leading. And you see the Attorney General of the United States, Pam Bondi, go after one of those people, telling them to tread carefully. Threatening them, threatening members of Congress. Of course it'll expand. Of course at some point Pam Bondi is going to say the same thing about Bernie Sanders and the same thing about AOC and the same thing about somebody else who, doesn't frame up or keeps dissenting to Donald Trump's autocratic oligarchy. But that is more reason for us to keep on protesting in any way that we can. Elon Musk talked about Social Security being a Ponzi scheme, remember? And then he's now saying that there's a lot of fraud in the Social Security Administration. And, well, Elon, you've had 2 months to go through it. If there's so much fraud, where are the prosecutions? Can I ask AG Bondi, where are the prosecutions? Where are the investigations? Why haven't you announced any? You're up there threatening Representative Crockett, but you don't have any substantive thing to say about the huge fraud, waste, and abuse that is going on in our government that has been the same size for the last 50 years, where government employees were already overworked before you all came in. So then we get to, how there's a concerted effort and attack on Donald Trump's part against the rule of law. And that is demonstrated by his targeting of Paul Wise and Perkins Coie and other major law firms in DC that have at some point represented interests of Democratic people with whom Donald Trump doesn't agree with, or whatever Donald Trump's grievances are. And my only thing to say about that is Paul Wise decided that their fiduciary duty to themselves and to their clients is higher than their obligation to the rule of law and to stand strong against an overreaching, an abusive dictator like autocrat who is now President of the United States. But they made their choice. Some of the other firms are not going like Paul Wise. So we are going to keep on seeing that tug and pull. But this is a war on the rule of law. This is a war on people who make a living on making sure that the law is followed, that the law is properly executed and not abused and exploited. And Donald Trump is blackmailing them into submission. Do not submit, do not comply. You know, if little people, we don't have much to lose, y'all have a lot to lose. You know, instead of 3 boats and 4 vacation homes, maybe you'll have 2 vacation homes and 2 boats and 7 cars, but you're going to have to make do. Now I'm going to come to the part of our government being compromised. So this story broke today early that Jeffrey Goldberg, who is the editor of the Atlantic magazine, was inadvertently added to a direct message chat thread on this app, this phone app called Signal, which is encrypted but not military grade, and it's commercially available for everybody, to a DM chat there that turned out to be a highly classified national security briefing level, skiff level talks about bombing Houthi rebels and sort of bombing Yemen, and, you know, essentially having this highly classified talk about intelligence officers and what knowledge we have and what we're going to do next in bombing these people. And then Mr. Goldberg waited a couple of hours looking for Yemen and Houthis, and, you know, lo and behold, there were the bombings. So there were these people, Vice President Vance, Defense Secretary Hegseth, Stephen Miller, Marco Rubio, and Tulsi Gabbard, who is the Director of National Intelligence, on a Signal chat talking about an imminent bomb strike on our adversaries, or terrorists, or people who we consider to be our adversaries. And now, not only do our enemies know that our top officials communicate through a commercially available Signal device, or they just they are reckless and careless about how they go about national security matters. Countries like Iran, Russia, and China are going to ramp up their cybersecurity, especially since Hegseth and others have stopped our defensive posture and our competitive advantage or competitiveness in the cyber warfare department. And you have people like the vice president and the defense secretary talking about loathing of freeloading Europeans, our allies, who stood with us after 9/11. We stood with them for World War II. Yes, that's great. We are great. That is the greatest generation. And we are burning down the world that the greatest generation helped build. So it is inconsistent in my mind that the government under AG Bondi would be audacious enough to say that we're not going to disclose state secrets material to Chief Judge Boasberg in a case about what was the information that was state secret, privileged, in the case of the Venezuelan migrants being shipped to El Salvador. But you can have an open signal chat where you have inadvertently invited Jeffrey Goldberg, who is a journalist, and sort of let him in on how careless, reckless, and compromised our government is at the time. Just to think that the Director of National Intelligence is on signal talking about bombings that are imminent and happening. Talked about how Donald Trump had given the green light, enabling our adversaries and enemies like Iran, Russia, and China to say, oh, this is how careless they are? This is what we are dealing with now? Okay, we can just tweak around a little bit and go through all their phones and go through all of their information because they're not following the classified top secret SCIF procedures anymore. They're not on government sanctioned encrypted lines and classified phones anymore. They're just on their personal phones, presumptively walking around or lazing around and having a drink in their sofas, in their living rooms. So that is the state of how broken and compromised we are just 2 months and 5 days into Donald Trump's second term and his first reign and dictatorship. You know, after hearing this garbage about Europe being freeloading and this and that, and then Donald Trump essentially negotiating on behalf of Russia with Ukraine, this, I think, should push Europe together closer to become an actual union and band their military together, close off NATO to United States if it doesn't want to be a functional part of it, because we know that European countries are not going to be sharing intel with the American government after this information and this article has come out. And mind you, Mr. Goldberg has done the due diligence of being a journalist and keeping sensitive information, national security information, out of the public eye. Information that these people, the Director of National Intelligence, the Defense Secretary, and the Vice President didn't think was important enough to talk about in the West Wing Situation Room or in a secured classified information facility. So, you know what Donald Trump's reply was to all of this? He doesn't know anything about that talk. And then he goes on to attack Atlantic for publishing this article. That was Donald Trump's response. So here we stand. All the king's men have shat their beds. And the king is golfing. Are any heads going to roll? Is anybody in the House or Senate going to question Tulsi Gabbard and Pete Hegseth about what the fuck just happened? And I'm sorry to curse. It's at the very end. Otherwise, YouTube would have issues. So that's where we are. It's a mess. It's a hot, hot mess. And thank you, Mr. Goldberg, for giving us this window into how dire the situation is. Please stay safe. Also, to the rest of you, please stay informed. Stay energized. Remember, we have to stand up for our republic, and every single one of us count. And this information superhighway that we have with the internet, We must use that to spread information and facts and to dispel misinformation and disinformation. With that said, thank you so much for listening. Please like and subscribe and share. This is a one-man show sitting in front of his computer and screaming into the void so somebody hears me, because our country is in trouble. I hope you hear me. Take care.